Welcome back to the Liberty Perspective. I'm Joe Marshall. Today with this show, I want to continue on with the last show that I did, and we're talking about how science, biology, not just biology, but all of science, and really all of academia, and everything that comes out of academia, right? Public health, our law, and what's going on in our courts and our court decisions today, and it's all being based on collectivism. The collectivist mindset is infiltrated, and it's easy to say, but it's not so easy to show that these things have actually been happening. And over my shows that I've posted over the past, going right back to the first show, is basically what I'm doing. I'm showing and documenting how collectivism has been targeting our founding principles, our republic, and the individual rights and liberty that are secured therein for destruction. And it's infiltrated all of academia. Everything that we know is being taught, and our kids are being taught, and critical theory, critical race theory is just another aspect of that collectivism that our kids are being taught in school. It's right in the curricula, the pedagogy of the oppressed, if you will. Paulo Freire, I think that's how you say his name. He was a Marxist, came up with this pedagogy of the oppressed, or student-oriented or student-based education, kind of thing, where it's all part of critical race theory, critical race theory. Critical race theory is just an aspect of critical theory, which is all a Marxist tactic to undermine the dominant society by creating a critical awareness, of everything and only all things, of all things and only all things critical of our society, critical of our own society. So kids in school, that's all they know, are all things critical, and only all things are being taught, only all things critical of their own country, of our own founding principles, of their own liberty, of their own individual rights and liberty. And the founding principles upon which our whole republic was ordained through our Constitution, right? But this whole science thing and how it's infiltrated into science, and how science, all of science and collectivism, via particularly Marxism, world socialism, internationalism is what they used to refer to it as when science first started getting the international. And I've done shows on this, and I've done all these shows that I've been doing. The common thread is collectivism and how it's targeted America, our republic, our Constitution, and our individual rights and liberty, our freedom and way of life as we have always known it, for destruction. And the other thing is that this collectivism, through human rights and the redistributive justice and humanism comes down through, where like one of Obama's favorite expressions used to be, one of his favorite expressions was that in the here and now, and that's what humanism is in the here and now. And he used to talk about collective salvation. You can't have individual salvation without collective salvation. Well, that's counter to Scripture. Spiritually, I can't do anything to save anybody else, and nobody else can do anything to save me. It's up to me. It's to do what I need to do to, if I want to work towards having an afterlife in heaven, if you will, or whatever positive place, or am I going to be punished in the afterlife? That's an individual thing. But collectivism, being that it's essentially anti-God, it's secular. It's not just atheist in a lot of ways. It's anti-theist in a lot of ways, fundamentally. And you read the Humanist Manifesto. That's all you got to do is read the Humanist Manifesto. Read Huxley's UNESCO's philosophy and purpose, and it lays it right out there. It's not just atheist, it's anti-theist. But we get back there to, so all these things that were being laid out and we're coming down through, Obama was talking about this collective salvation. You can't have your individual salvation without collective salvation. Well, that's what collectivism does, because now you have to forego. You have to prominently do the collective salvation in the here and now. And the kingdom of God is not of this earth, is what Scripture tells us. Collectivism says the kingdom of God here on this earth, in this life, in the here and now. Okay? Not arguing for it one way or the other. I'm just telling you that this is how it comes down through doctrine. This is how it's put out through doctrine. Scripture versus doctrine. And if you read them both, you'll see that they're 180 degrees. They're diabolically opposed. Diametrically and diabolically opposed, if you want to go there. But this collective salvation, you can't have individual salvation without collective salvation, as Obama used to beat it into us, right? That's doctrinarily collectivist, humanist, Marxist. Remember, he used to talk about spreading the wealth around, and nobody understood where he was coming from. Well, that's socialist, that's Marxist, from those whatever, from what they can give to those what they need, or some shit like that, right? Or from those according to their ability, to those according to their need, or some shit. That's all redistributive justice, upon which all our sustainable development goals, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the redistributive justice of human rights are all based on that collectivism shit. Yeah, so that's where this whole, we divide between Scripture and any type of faith, and that science is being interjected. That secular enlightenment is being evolutionary. Secular enlightenment is being interjected at every level of our education, every level of our children's education, every aspect of our children's education. And then all through college, this whole woke thing. And what is woke? Woke is just the critical awareness based on race, right? A lot of it, if you want to go to critical race theory, the critical awareness is based on race, or whatever other oppressed peoples. The whole context of we learn everything about America in the context of the oppressed versus oppressor context of the Communist Manifesto. The first line or two in the Communist Manifesto is about the war between the oppressed and the oppressors. And the whole Communist Manifesto is in that context. So they put everything in education to our kids in that same context. They put it's inherent. It's in the, if you want to go there, the DNA of academia. And it's a fundamental, inherent, systemic, implicit bias of everything that we've come to know, pretty much, that we're being taught in our schools. Then when we graduate, we become active agents of change for that, and we carry forth the tenets of the revolution into society. And as Gramsci said, it's the conformism that's been taught to us as freedom, and we can't see past it. No, it's the only thing we know. It's like I said before, how do you explain to a fish that it's wet? It's kind of the same thing, kind of the same thing. Kind of the same thing. You can see I'm wearing my bald head there. You see I'm wearing my Second Amendment hat today. It's got an AR-15 on it, or an M16 civilian model. It's a AR-15, right? The one President Trump said was a big gun. Well, if a 5.56 or a .223 caliber is a big gun, it's news to me. But this is a Second Amendment hat. I don't know. It is what it is, right? It's the only AR-15 I'm allowed in New York State anymore, and it's was it Safe Act compliant? It would be missing all those things. Detachable magazine, flash suppressor, pistol grip, all the things that make the big gun of an AR-15 illegal in New York. For the most part, they do have them that are Safe Act compliant, but it's bullshit. And our Second Amendment doesn't have any champions in contemporary politics today outside to convolute it. Just my observation. And as with everything else that I'm doing in this show, we're going to get into this here a little bit. Let me see what I got here. Yeah. And everything with this show that I've been doing, and I'm trying to do, especially in this series too, continuing in this series of the infiltration of science, and let me see if I can get that there. It's a continuation of that. You know, I'm trying to show. It's just I'm thinking out loud. I'm thinking out loud with this stuff because it's not like I'm on a script. You know, I had a guy tell me that I'm on words. I'm throwing words up in the air. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're not on a script, you know. I was just thinking out loud here. We're putting it out there. I'm looking up things. I'm checking out things. I'm digging into Marxist literature, Marxist doctrine to see what Marxists are saying. And then when I tell you what these guys are saying, well, somehow, you know, Marxism it's all bad because Marxism is evil, or for some reason, I don't know about evil, but for some reason, you know, never mind the billion or so dead people that have been, you know, gassed or tortured or burned or starved to death in its wake in the world, right? I don't know. But anyways, Marxists are Marxists. This isn't for the cult. This information I'm going through here isn't for the cult. It's for those people who are looking to get out of the cult, trying to find a way out of the cult, or even better, avoid it altogether from the beginning. It's just information, just thinking out loud. I could have it all wrong. And I don't mean to put, you know, words in other people's mouth on any of this stuff. I am inspired by, been inspired by the work of Dr. Jonathan Cooey to kind of dig into this more, because he calls it bad biology. And he calls it bad biology. It's evolutionary from how I understand what he's getting to. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth or anybody else's mouth when I play off their work or dive into their work and try to understand it so that I can relate how it correlates from a liberty perspective to a threat on our liberty and a threat on our republic. That's all I'm trying to do. But when I say that. You know, this work that I'm showing you in this, that it's Cooey's bad biology. I'm not saying that's what Cooey is saying his bad biology is. This is just, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I just want to reiterate that I'm just coming from a liberty perspective, and how I can see his work is backed by. His work coming from a biology perspective is consistent with my work from a liberty perspective. How it threatens our republic and our individual rights and liberty. That's where I just wanted to kind of get that. And I still believe that this is the overarching script, as I was saying before. Collectivism is now the overarching script to pretty much everything our kids are being taught, everything that's been being injected into the American mindset for 200 years now. I mean, the transcendentalists were doing this shit, starting up their Bible communism stuff, and there was Owens, and there was, you know, Fourier, and the founder of socialism. These guys transcendentalists in America. Back in the early 1800s, 1836, I think Robert Dale Owen published his what was it? What did he call it? It was in New Harmony, and he published this thing called the Declaration of Mental Independence, I think he called it. That was like 1836. So this stuff's been going on for a while. You know what I mean? And I still think that, from my perspective, Marxism, in particular, collectivism at large, and there's a lot of different battles in between all of these collectivisms, just like there is in the medical freedom movement itself. There's a lot of different people going back and forth, calling attention to each other, actually, in their fights back and forth. Marx did the whole thing too, where he critiqued this guy, critiqued Cropton, or he critiqued humanism, or he critiqued that, and then he would critique humanism and then say that where humanism is basically communism with the abolition of God, communism is humanism with the abolition of property, or something to that effect, But I kind of left off on our last show here. Where we were getting into the dialectical ecologist Richard Levins and the science and praxis of human nature, metabolism. Here, this guy, John Bellamy Foster. We're going to get into him. John Bellamy Foster. We're going to get into him, and we'll hit on him in a minute. But continuing where we kind of left off on the last show. Sorry for the long intro, I guess. There's this article here, okay? I said it's not only in biology, it's not only intrinsic. This overarching central script of collectivism isn't only in biology or science, but the whole of academia and everything that comes out of academia. Law, right? Public health, population health, same shit, right? Exposing the centralized, otherwise covert collectivist script, the implicit bias, implicit bias. So this is now we're getting into the implicit bias of the implicit bias accusatory. And here, because that's why everybody's getting implicit bias training now in law enforcement, government agencies, big corporations that are, of course, public-private partnerships with the government, right? That are being called capitalists or giving capitalism the bad name that it has, even though capitalism for real is free market enterprise, which we need to have a free society. So the collectivist script is the implicit bias, if you will, inherent to not only genetics, but to pretty much all contemporary sciences. Not to mention scientists, including Benjamin Franklin himself. It's like these guys here, they brag. They brag. The smartest man ever was a socialist. Right? The whole of academia and the very underlying foundation of both fascism, the fascism of public-private partnerships between governments and its so-called private corporation partners, and the centralized progressive public policies and public health that result. This is where we left off. You got this book. We talked about how they're always talking about science. Somebody's always accusing somebody of science being under the influence or being incorporated or being captured by somebody. But it's always some kind of evolutionary person saying that another evolutionary person is doing that, or of that capitalism, the science of capitalism versus the science of, world socialism. But it's nothing new. It's nothing new. And we've got this book here, which is Biology Under the Influence, written in this article here. This dialectical ecologist, Richard Levins, in The Science of Praxis of Human Nature, this article here, which in which Foster's fellow Marxians Richard Lewontin and Richard Levin's, their biology under influence is referenced some 43 times in that article. Even once, but 43 times. Yeah, so, and in that article, it's like Levin's contributions to science and critical thought, there we go, critical theory, right? Levin's contributions to science and critical thought far transcend his forays into mathematical ecology as he engaged ecology in its widest dimensions, including population ecology. Malthusian shit right there, okay? Population, well, you're going to get into population health. You're going to get into population-wide genetics and macrogenetics versus microgenetics, right? That this stuff has all found its way into, that collectivism has found its way into, as fundamental to the science. Including population ecology, ecological systems analysis, evolutionary processes, the philosophy and history of science, agroecology, and eco-development, sociological planning, environmental history, public health, Marxian ecological theory, and eco-socialism. Eco-socialism, right? Go figure. All of which for him taken together constitute the truth as the whole. The truth as the whole. So it's just like, everything else in collectivism. You got to look at it like spokes on a wheel. On your bicycle wheel or whatever, could have 100 spokes or whatever. But each one of these different derivatives of this is a different spoke. But they're all spokes of the same collectivist wheel that's running us over. That's just one way of looking at it. That constitutes the truth as a whole. At the root of all of Levin's thinking, from the days of his youth to this work as a mature ecological science, was a conception of the dialectics of nature and society drawn from such thinkers as Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, V.I. Levin, which is this guy, right? Levin's another one. Yeah, okay, never mind. I've seen something, I thought I saw something that wasn't there. Might be this whole works the same way, right? But anyways, such thinkers as Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, V.I. Levin, J.D. Barnell, J.B.S. Haldane, Joseph Needham, Christopher Caldwell, Marco Prenant, Ivanovich, and Schmalhausen, and C.H. Waddington. Now, I haven't come across all these names in the work that I've been going down through and reading, but probably a few of them here. That, Waddington, Haldane, I've seen his name, Lenin, right? And then, that's Vladimir Lenin. What the hell am I talking about? Sorry about that. But anyways, as he cognitantly, Levin, as he cognitively observed, perhaps the first investigation of a complex objective as a system was the masterwork of Karl Marx, Das Kapital. So again, it goes back to Marx, which explored both the economic and ecological basis of capitalism as a systems, the systems approach. Marx's materialist dialectics, truth is in the middle, it's not here, it's not there, it's in the middle. Marx's materialist dialectics extended to not only the political economic critique of capitalism and the argument for socialism, on that basis, but also contributed to a dialectical naturalism. Wouldn't that be like evolution or Darwin's thing? Encompassed the ecological connections, contradictions of humanity and the earth, necessitating social change. It's right there. Necessitating social change. All this coming together that then necessitates social change. This is why the connection from the genome, from genetics to the genome, which would include environment, is genetics. Does socialism, Marxism just give credit and a credence to these genetics, or are these different evolutionary genetics and genomics and phenomics giving credence to Marxism and collectivism? You see what I'm saying? Is it just an extension of collectivism and Marxism? Which is where I'm going, you know, or what I'm trying to see. So is it there or isn't, you know? The evidence to me is obvious. But I'm just putting it out there what I got for you to decide. Now I got this sorry. All right, I see something here. Yeah. This Bellamy Foster. I've got a hashtag here, a number sign. Also of interest regarding John Bellamy Foster, a professor of sociology. Comes down from Comte, right? Auguste Comte. The queen of all sciences, where the planners in every collectivist society has to have its central planners and central plans, to which all other plans will be consistent. You know? If there's a central script, all other scripts are consistent with the central script. Same shit. He's a professor of sociology at the University of Oregon and editor of the Socialist Magazine Monthly Review. It's this magazine here, Monthly Review. It's a socialist magazine. Why socialism, right? Okay. John Bellamy Foster. It's the guy that wrote that article that we were just reading, talking about Levin's Marxism. And this guy's a Marxist, so why wouldn't a Marxist, you know what I mean? Anyways, that he traces the lineage of the Enlightenment to the centralized collectivist scripting of everything, which would and does include truth itself, back to the great enlightener of antiquity, referred to the great enlightener of antiquity, Epicurus. Epicurus. I don't know how other people pronounce that. Epicurus. In this case, okay, this is how he did it, and this is a quote from him. This is from Foster. In this case, the materialism of Bacon and Marx, and even that of Darwin, although less directly, could be traced back to a common point of origin, the ancient materialist philosophy of Epicurus. Epicurus' role as the great enlightener of antiquity, a view of his work that was shared by thinkers as distinct as Bacon, Kant, Hegel, and Marx. The Enlightenment, the secular Enlightenment, if you will, right? The dialectal comes right from Hegel. That's Hegel. That was all adapted by Marx and Engels. Now I got this double hashtag here, where we're coming back here. Marx's materialist dialectal is extended to not only the political economic critique of capitalism and the argument for socialism on that basis, but also contributed to a dialectical naturalism that encompassed the ecological connections. Ecology, okay? And the contradictions, which were the contradictions of humanity and the earth, necessitating social change. And of course, to that effect, the directing and controlling evolution. All right. and then evolution out of the biodiversity that is a result of evolution, right? So out of that ecological connections regarding that, it is that the Darwinian evolutionary jump from a Marxist collectivist captured science to the dialectical naturalism of a centralized Darwinian evolutionary Marxist/socialist revolution, what Jonathan Cooey has referred to as a social pivot. He might have just said it in passing, I'm not sure, but that's one of the things I like about watching Dr. Jonathan Cooey's show over at Giga-Ohm Biological, is that he picks up on these things. He picks up on these collectivist interjections that 9.9% of people out there just pass right over and not even see it. He picks up on them. And this social pivot that he's talking about, it's intrinsic to science altogether, is what I'm trying to say. It's systemic to science altogether. It's systemic to our understanding of science and biology as we understand it today. The collectivism is foundational to our understanding of how we have it, and this is and it's become this over the past 100 years or whatever, right? We're past 100 years or more, 150 years. This ecological connections and this evolutionary jump from the science to the social via environmental factors, or so it were, ecology. Via ecology. Ecology is the vehicle, the vector, if you will, for the collectivism from science into the social, environmental, the environment. This is why the environment aspect of how we understand genomics or phenomics or genetics or the Human Genome Project or the Human Phenome Project, whatever they're doing, okay? It's been long established, this jump, this social pivot, as Cooey has referred to it. I caught it when he said it. I saw the same things. He calls out a lot of the same things that I do when I'm watching his show, when he's doing study halls on shows. I find it interesting. I get a kick out of it, really. The ecologist. The revolution will be ecologized, right? Ecologized. The revolution will be ecologized, not colonized, but ecologized. Social change in the 21st century. This article by the Symbiosis Research Collective kind of brings us forward to that a little bit here. And this is this article here. The Ecologist, okay? The revolution will be ecologized, social change in the 21st century. This is just in 2018, see? This is just in 2018. I'm not making this shit up, man. I mean, I don't know. But there it is. An ecological revolution requires not only a world without capitalism, okay, but also a world without states. And that's another thing that I see that Cooey's always on. He sees it. He sees that they're against states. They're against nationhood. It's a world socialism. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of socialism. There's nationalism. But what people don't see, or I haven't observed anybody really getting the big picture on what nationalism is. Nationalism is just another socialism that in the dialectal at large will battle it out for the final truth that will be the end result of the world socialism that results. So nationalists nationalism is this collectivism, is this socialism, but it's an aspect of a multiple part revolution. Like Lenin had the same thing with social democrats and democratic socialism. You talk to a democratic socialist, you call him a communist. I had a friend that I grew up with, and he told me he was a democratic socialist for Bernie Sanders. I was like, well, you're a communist. And he divorced me, man. This guy's a lifelong friend, and he divorced me because I called him a communist. I said, well, it doesn't matter. You can divorce me. You're a communist. I'm sorry. But anyways, I did. He was mad. But it's just, if you can read Lenin, and I've quoted the paper that Lenin has written on this multiple times. A social democrat he calls himself a social democrat because he knows that the road to socialism is through democracy. Where you have and this revolution is multiple parts. You take in the bourgeois and the petty bourgeois, right? And you take the petty bourgeois into, like, the unions and the labor markets. You take them people in as an aspect against the capitalists and the bourgeois themselves. But once the bourgeois are defeated, then you got to defeat the petty bourgeois too. You got to get rid of them. They're not going to be around in the end. It's the same with democratic socialists. Same with nationalism. Democratic socialists with communism, they're gone once the revolution gets to the point where they don't need them anymore. They got to destroy them too. And it's the same thing with nationalism. I mean, Steve Bannon out there in all the different nationalisms that are being promoted. Alexander Dugin is promoting nationalism, kind of like a I don't know, sort of like a, what do they call it, national conservatives. The whole national conservative movement came out of a lot of big, at large anyways, came out of a lot of the work that Alexander Dugin from Russia, Putin's Rasputin, right, came out of Russia and influenced this national conservative, which was basically just nationalist socialist. It's now in America. They've had this national conservative movements. They've been having meetings every year for the past, 8 years or so now, right? Happened just before COVID, or right about the time COVID started. They started having these national conservative movement. I've done some writing on them too. But nationalism is just another bunch of socialisms that get lost in the same dialectical that applies to all of them through the same Hegelian, Darwinian, evolutionary, dialectal collectivism. These nationalisms, they can let them all fight it out, and then the dialectal will decide who's going to be the winner of the world socialism. That's all it is. You know what I mean? An ecological revolution requires not only a world without capitalism, but a world without states. In fact, for millennia, states have been enforcing depletion of natural ecosystems in the service of aristocrats and the elites. Yeah, aristocrats and the elites, right? Just as the Enlightenment revolutions were closely tied to the development of secular science, there it is, coming from the other side, right? Just as the Enlightenment revolutions were closely tied to the development of secular sciences like optics and astronomy. Sorry, Sagan, right? The gradual the gradational and relational logic of ecology today provides the conceptual basis of a truly democratic transformation. Revolution in the 21st century advances natural evolution not only in content but in form. Our time is now. It's a call for revolution based on ecology. All right? But anyways, I got this article that shows how this ecology Marxism and collectivism is attacking us and targeting our way of life, individual rights and liberty, and our founding principles through ecology. Okay. That article is the Symbiosis Research Collective. I got this question mark here in red down here. More from this article, from this author, sorry. The Progressive International. The Progressive International. The Ecologist. This is the more from the same author, okay? Rethinking Community Organizing. That picture of that guy, that's Solinsky, in case anybody doesn't know who that is. The guy who wrote Rules for Radicals, among other things. The OG community organizer that Obama and Hillary Clinton studied under. The whole concept of infiltrating the system as it exists. The whole concept of understanding the world as it is, that we understanding the world, and we have to work from where the world as it is, so that we can change it to think to how we think it should be. It was a mantra of the Obamas. It comes out of Alinsky, and he says, building a just, sustainable future will require transcending traditional community organizing models, working through existing institutions within the current system is not good enough. See, where Alinsky, one of his rules for Raz was working within the system and destroying it from the inside out, basically, you know. And that's what the Clintons were all about. That's what the Obamas were all about. They're doctrinaire, ideological, revolutionary collectivists that have been, you know, president and first lady, ran for president. Right up to the top, these people have infiltrated our every pillar of our Republican way of life. I just wanted to show you that this the latest from the Symbiosis Research Collective. Excuse me, I'm sorry, but Research Collective. So as you can see, it's coming down through here. The ecological connections, the Marxism is being injected into our understanding of sciences, and that understanding of the sciences is also being in economics, not just in economics, but in ecology and environmental. You got to remember, that's where the whole genome, the whole genetics things, you got to understand that the environmental things, that's why a lot of Marxists fought against the Mendelian thing. I mean, it kind of makes sense, and that maybe that's why the Marxists, you know, a lot of them have written papers and critiqued this whole Mendelian genetics only, or, you know, biological determinism, right? That's why, because it kind of rules out the environment, which is necessary for the Marxist social pivot from the science to, as this Levin guy says, to necessitating a social change. Just showing you, okay? This Progressive International. More. Here's another one per this article about this article here. This Progressive International. The Symbiosis. Welcome to the Progressive International. Okay. Symbiosis internationalism beyond nation states. True internationalism means building people power wherever we live. And I don't think, you know, and then this got symbiosis. Internationalism beyond states, nation states. Symbiosis is a confederation of community organizers. The Alinsky people that want to drop Alinsky's model of working from the inside out. Is a confederation of community organizations across North America. So they're North America, which would be Mexico, Canada, and the United States, right? Building a democratic, just, and ecological society from the ground up. That also sounds a lot like Sasha Stone's shit too, doesn't it? Yeah. Our first Congress of Movements was held in September of 2019. This is all stuff that's just coming to fruition now. In Detroit, Michigan, allies and member organizations gathered to discuss strategies for how to build popular power outside the governing institutions of our present system. Do you understand the revolutionary tone to that? Member organizations gathered to discuss strategies for how to build popular power outside the governing institutions of our present system. That's Sasha Stone, too. All the medical freedom people going to his freaking, New Age guru shit, right? And the QAnon stuff that he was pushing. The Confederation aims to supplant these institutions. Last I knew, that means take them over. With truly democratic ones of our own, we are writing as members of the Symbiosis Research Collective. The one that wrote that article about ecology. Political education as a form of internationalism. Another word for world socialism, which is another word for communism, okay? And internationalism as a form of political education. Political education is a form of internationalism, and internationalism is a form of political education. Many of us became politicized through learning about and supporting movements for self-determination and autonomy in Palestine, Northeast Syria, and Mexico, as well as indigenous struggles in the United States and Canada. There's a big push now for, anti-Israeli stuff, pro-Palestinian stuff, Syrians, in Mexico, the Zapatista, you see a lot of these people, reference Zapatista too and bring them up. But it's the oppressed versus oppressor context, and a lot of these people that support this revolution in America also support these guys. I don't know, a lot of the stuff that's happening in Israel, a lot of this Israel stuff on the college campuses, the pro-Palestinian stuff that's spread like wildfire on the college campuses throughout the United States, anti-Semitism, if you will. It's all part and parcel to the same revolution. It's just one of the things I want to point out. I don't know. I kind of hold back because I really don't know the information that we're getting on this stuff. I can't tell heads or tails from it. Maybe that's by design. I don't know. I don't have an observation on it. But the one thing that is consistent with it all is that the pro-Palestinian movement is consistent with the revolutionary collectivist revolution, world socialist revolution at large. Just pointing that out. I'm not saying it. The people that are pushing the revolution are saying it. I'm just showing you that they're saying it. You can see also on this a Marxist archaeology. Okay. Now these aren't people written by this isn't information that's coming from people that are anti-Marxist. This is coming from people. This is socialists and Marxists bragging about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Just pointing that out. A Marxist archaeology. Quote out of there: a dialectical approach, a dialectical approach, okay, rejects either or choices and instead asking categorical questions inquires how dialectical relationships drive culture change. That's why you can't be a politician. You can't be a politician in today's dialectical politics. Today's pragmatic. That's where pragmatism comes out of the same dialectics. Was it William James's and John Dewey's pragmatism, which was the inspiration for one of the inspirations for Mussolini's fascism? It's all, as Cooey also says, the same level and show. All, as I've said before, it's a different way of saying it. It's all spokes on the same collectivist wheel running us over. But, yeah. A dialectical approach rejects either or choices instead of asking categorical questions and inquires how dialectical relationships drive culture change, because it's not here, it's not here, it's not there, it's in the middle. Truth isn't here, it's in the middle. Then you can take that middle truth and apply it to another hyperbole, and it's not there or there, it's in the middle. Truth becomes unobtainable, lost in the abyss of the forever, in perpetuity, lost in the abyss of the dialectal, which, and everything that gets thrown into the dialectal, the truth on that subject is lost in perpetuity, can never be obtained. It becomes elusive, unobtainable, on all matters, on all subjects. Is it a coincidence? That Jesus said, I am the truth? I don't know. Marxism is also a theory of praxis. Praxis refers to theoretically informed practice or agency. Praxis is the human activity through which people transform the world and themselves. The ultimate goal of Marxism is a praxis that transforms both people and society. So, is genetics a praxis? Is genomics a praxis? That will be transforming people once they have directed evolution? Is it a praxis that once they change both the people and society? That's just what I'm kind of getting at here. That's where the environment comes in. As a dialectical concept, praxis implies that our agency, agents of change, our agency, both as scholars and more broadly as social beings, or as I've seen put, sentient beings, right, must lie in the interconnections between human free creative agency and the material. For example, concrete. Conditions of human existence must lie in the interconnections between human free creative agency and the material conditions, material conditions, concrete conditions of human existence. Praxis of Marxism implies an archaeology that can be a form of political action. Archaeology is another science. There's a show that I've watched, and it's called Ancient something, and this guy, he's an archaeologist, and he has a theory on Earth's history, ancient mysteries, or I can't remember, but he's in there. He's always having to fight with the archaeological echelons, the hierarchy of archaeology and academia. They it's up to them whether they recognize it or don't recognize it. Is this why? Is this why that hierarchy even exists? implies an archaeology that can be a form of political action. Right? Marxist anthropology. Marxist anthropology. This comes from this article. Out of the University of Alabama. Right? A little bit out of this just so we get an idea what that's about. Marx was a revolutionary who focused his efforts on understanding capitalism to overthrow it. One of the things that even a lot of the conservative people have come to accept is capitalism is bad. This point of view is so common now, has so infiltrated the mindset of American people that even the conservative, or whatever that even means anymore, conservative right is willing to accept the premise of capitalism is bad. Shannon Joy being the one example of that is was one of the things that made me realize just how drunk on the Kool-Aid these people in the collectivism, being that Kool-Aid, the collectivist Kool-Aid, how drunk they are on it. They've become nose blind to the collectivism they have put forth that they're fighting against. And they're fighting collectivism with collectivism concepts. You can't say that you're going to push back against the collectivisms of lockdowns and that you have a right to not take the jab, and then also fight for our freedom based on the human rights that say that there is no such thing as a human right to not take the jab. Do you understand the futility in that, if not a setup? You know, and it's the same thing with this whole deal here, is that understand that Marx was a revolutionary who focused his efforts on understanding capitalism the way a Marxist would understand it, and teach it the way a Marxist would understand it, to overthrow it. And then they're teaching us how to understand our own founding principles. They're teaching us how to understand our own Constitution. They're teaching us how to understand our own freedom and liberty, so that they don't have to destroy it. They'll just get us to destroy it if we can understand our own freedom and liberty in our own country from the perspective of the people that have targeted it for destruction. And that's what critical theory does. That's what critical race theory does. That's what the pedagogy of the oppressed does, that are mainstream in the education system of America, K through 12 and all throughout upper academia. That's for damn sure. The ivory towers are red, man. They're not ivory towers, red towers, you know. Key works: Ancient Society, 1877. In this anthropological classic, Lewis Henry Morgan, takes a social evolutionary approach to understanding change in material culture. This would become a deeply influential text to Marx and Engels, as it verified the central role that material goods play in developing a centralized economy, and subsequent emphasis that emerges on private property. This work would become the basis for Engels' The Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State, which is, I would say again, is the origin, one of the major origins of feminism, the way it came out. Women's rights movement was a lot of it, based on that, because in that origins of the family, and Marxism, the communist revolution, wants to abolish the nuclear family. It's right there, the origins of the family, private property, and the state. The origin, and kind of in a nutshell, that Engels' work there, the family was in monogamy, and having a wife was monogamy, was a man, because the inheritance that a man would have, he could only give his inheritance to a documented and known verifiable descendant. He wanted to give his, inheritance. He wanted to hand down, bequeath, if you will, his holdings to his sons or his descendants. They would have to know for sure that it was his descendants, so they came up with marriage, that this property-based system of a nuclear family was so that the woman would be forced to be monogamous, basically a slave to property, so that the man could go out and be promiscuous all he wanted, but the woman was a sex slave to the private property and capitalism, capital, so that he could be sure to pass his inheritance down to his sons. And basically from that, whole concept, the women's rights movement was launched. And if you read a lot of the literature that came out of that, you'll see the foundations of it coming from that. I talk about it in my book too. I go through that and lay it all out, and we can read it, and you can read right from the document itself on what it says. Yeah, all in all, yet another Marxist verification of Zygmunt Dobbs's The Great Social Deceit. Zygmunt Dobbs wrote an article, back in the 40s, or 60s, 1960s. This guy, Zygmunt Dobbs, he wrote a book called regarding Keynes at Harvard, John Maynard Keynes at Harvard, and his Fabian socialist. The whole concept of Fabian socialism and Keynes being one of the major players at Harvard that helped infiltrate socialism into our major into our economics and our national economy policies. And one of the ways he did it was through FDR's new. He became the underlying economic force for FDR's New Deal. The whole New Deal concept came from another Fabian socialist, or was prominently founded on another Fabian socialist, Stuart Chase, who wrote a book titled The New Deal. But anyways, and I go over that a little bit in my book too. But in this article here, this article or book, if you will, that was put out. This Archibald Roosevelt, this Veritas Foundation, a lot of the lefties, collectivist lefties, socialists, Marxists, progressives, they'll do anything and everything they can and to discredit this work, as they do a lot to discredit any work that calls it out. But this guy names names. This guy names names in here. And names that are familiar, that everything that I'm all these articles from socialists that are bragging about what socialists are doing and what socialists are doing, what they're doing. This guy names these names, and a lot of them are consistent. They show up again and again all down through this work. I can't recommend this any stronger. That people look this up. The Great Deceit, Social Pseudosciences. And when you live in a collectivist society, or when you talk about a collectivist society or a centrally planned society, there is no science. There is no science, no such thing, nor can there be any such thing as a science that's not a social science. And if it's a social science, it's a pseudoscience. And maybe I'll get into that piece a little bit more on another show, but this work right here, I just seen how it was backing up a lot of the shit that's in that article, in that book or article or whatever it was. Okay, and the recent reiteration of the same, if not outright Marxist, at least Marxian collectivism intrinsic to both the anti-vaccine or anti-vax nationalism Hotez talks about vaccinationalism. Not nationalism, but vaccinationalism. The global governance of Peter Hotez, okay? The Marxian collectivism, if not outright Marxism, okay? Intrinsic to both the anti-vaccinationalism global governance of Peter Hotez and the more pragmatic dialectical collectivism of the hockey stick dude, Michael Mann's Science Under Siege. Now, these two guys, is there anybody out there that's drinking more Kool-Aid than these two freaking guys? But anyways, then they get together. They're like Wonder Twin powers freaking activate, and they get Science Under Siege. I don't know, man. But this whole Science Under Siege accusatory, you know how they're coming out there, you know, with the science is being taken over. They're talking about, you know, the anti-vaxxers and all this stuff is pseudoscience and Science Under Siege. But it's not any difference in what, you know, they were talking about, you know. Sorry, I want to show you this Biology Under the Influence, or what was the other one? I mean, there was another book I talked about earlier. You know, regarding the more pragmatic dialectical collectivism. Sorry, the more pragmatic dialectical collectivism of Michael Mann as it pertains to the rabid anti-neoliberal thesis of the Marxist Naomi Klein, in which Mann himself writes. Klein goes further. Her thesis is that neoliberalism, the prevailing global policy model, the dominant society targeted for destruction, predicated on privatization and free market capitalism. See, that's the whole thing. Like I was started to talk about a little bit earlier about Shannon Joy and all these people saying, well, they're jumping on the freaking anti-capitalist bandwagon. Oh, yeah, you got to go against the capital. Well, Marx came up with the word, man. It's got to be bad. But it was a word he came up with to describe or define free market capitalism, which is necessary for a free state. It's all based on private property, which Noah Webster, a Federalist, referred to as the fountain from which the stream of liberty flows, and thereby the one thing that we need to protect to maintain our republic and free society. This is what our founding principles say. Okay? And if you don't want to protect that, then what's capitalism? What's free market capitalism? What's free enterprise? It's just the fundamental aspect of it is exchange for property owned for property desired. If you don't have a system that upholds private property, you can't freely exchange that property, then there's no sense in having private property. And one of the things the Communist Manifesto says is going to abolish is private property, along with the nuclear family, right? And eternal truths. In the dialectal, it gets lost. Yeah. Klein goes farther. Naomi Klein goes farther. Mann writes, her thesis is on neoliberalism, which is actually the modified or progressively compromised form of laissez-faire or free market enterprise, if you remember, from another show that I did. The prevailing global policy model predicated on privatization and free market capitalization must be overthrown through mass resistance. She holds that climate change can't be separated from other pressing social problems, each a system of neoliberalism, the progressively compromised form of laissez-faire. Income inequality, corporate surveillance, misogyny, famously known as misogyny, right, and white supremacy. I share her concern over each of these societal inflictions. That's Mann. I share her concern over each of these societal inflictions. He's a I don't know, a Marxist in denial of being a Marxist. I don't know if he doesn't. He says he's not a Marxist, or they say he's not a Marxist. Yet he agrees with all the Marxism of Naomi Klein. Just saying. And then I get into this Naomi Klein here. I said, I go over the rabid anti-capitalism of Naomi Klein and her intergenerational ties not only to the international global leftist progressive elite, but to major players in the leftist progressive pseudosynthesis. It's a pseudosynthesis. But to major players on the leftist progressive rights, so-called medical freedom movement. Oh, that's the progressive. It's the progressive lefts the progressive leftists that all of a sudden now are the conservative right or the medical freedom right. But they're all leftists. They're all lifelong progressives, Democrats. You know, none of them have ever come from espousing or defending our founding principles. Yeah, I went over her rabid anti-capitalism, Naomi Klein's rabid anti-capitalism, in the fake rights so-called medical freedom movement, namely Robert Malone and James Thorpe and families. They've both done books, papers, and shows where speeches and that have promoted Naomi Klein's work, her anti-capitalism. Yeah. Disaster capitalism. Malone also did a thing at the Mises Institute, a presentation at the Mises Institute, which I went over on one of my shows. And I've got these three shows here. Deciphering the psyops of Robert Malone's Psy War. I go over that, how he promotes Naomi Klein's basically anti-capitalist. Essentially, if it's not Marxist, it's Marxian. Okay. And I went over this part 1 and part 2. I did 2 parts that had so much on this. Go over with Dr. Thorpe and his wife and his family. I don't know. He wrote a thing on disaster capitalism, promoting Naomi Klein's Marxian take on everything. And these two guys, well, he's prominent, that Dr. Thorpe, he's really prominent in the wellness company. Or was. I don't know if he still is or not. I don't pay attention to anything those people say anymore. Deciphering the psyops of Robert Malone's Psy War and, Dr. James Thorpe's and his wife's and his family's, because it was written by a bunch of different Thorpes. I don't know what that disaster capitalism. I've done shows that tie all this together in already. And again, this show is just a continuation of that, documenting that same infiltration. The medical freedom movement is just another aspect of this whole infiltration, the whole collectivism being infiltrated and injected into the mindset of American people, where we get the false dichotomies between the collectivism of the Marxian, communist, world socialist, lockdown concepts against the collectivism implicit to the medical freedom movement. How do you tell a fish it's wet? There's no way that it knows it's not. They can't, because it's never been dry. If it dries, it's dead. So it can never know that it's dry. What dry is, unless it wants to die. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, and I got this 3. I have this 3. Sorry, here. Go back up here. Where were we? Maybe I'm lost here. I'm lost. But anyways, and that whole progressive international, right? Progressives. I got this thing here. No. I don't see it. But anyways, I had something that I was going to show you, but I can't find it. So we're also this triple helix. I had it marked up there with 3 stars somewhere regarding the triple helix, the innovation triple helix of university, industry, government. Remember the triple helix? Talked about it in my last show where I introduced it. Who knew that an evolutionary process, we know the DNA has the double helix, but now we got the triple helix. Okay, this and the third way or third rail, I don't know. This is the triple helix. This is the third part of the DNA that we need to understand that comes into play here. Innovation, triple helix of university, industry, and government. That is what each strand of the helix is. Innovation, triple helix. Comes out of the Wilson Center, right? The triple helix of university, government, and industry. It's like public-private partnerships with the universities and the business. So it's where you have the public-private partnerships of, business and corporation. Now you have the public-private partnerships of universities, corporations, and the government. Yeah. It says, in which those 3 key stakeholders, they're stakeholders, universities, the government, and corporations, okay, are woven together to create the DNA of scientific innovation, and are key to innovation in a knowledge-based economy, universities, government, and industry. I got here, unlocking innovation, the triple helix model explained. And I wanted to show you this here. I'll show you this video here in a second. Innovation, triple, and quad. Not only is there a triple helix where instead of having a synthesis between 2 things, we can have a trinthesis or a quadinthesis now. Because they have quad helixes too for sustainable development in the area of globalization, in an era, of globalization. I shit you not. Springer Nature. From evolution of strategic interactions from the triple to quad helix innovation models for sustainable development in the era of globalization, which is just another word for capitalism. Or imperialism. You've got university, industry, government. New product ideas, innovations. Yeah, they come from the universities. And then you have the relationship, the 3-way. This is the holy trinity of secular collectivism here, right? The trinthesis. Universities, industry, government, jobs, taxes, infrastructure, funding, and strategic demands coming from government and universities together, and then they can work together to get the industries to no free market. No free market where the free people get to decide on the value of things by voting with their dollars. No, this is all dictated. This is all centralized. Yeah, strategic demands, in their words. If you can see that or not. Strategic demands. And the quadranthesis, the quadrihelix, not the triple helix, but the quadrihelix in the DNA of social revolution. You have the universities, industry, government, and civil society. The masses unions. I don't know what they're getting at there, but I'll play this.
If you ask what is the triple helix model of innovation, it's a very interesting model of innovation that brings together three important ecosystems in any country. And those three ecosystems are government, industry, companies, and so on and so forth. And number three is academia, universities, and high schools. So our mission is to facilitate collaboration between these three ecosystems of the triple helix ecosystem, namely government, industry, and academia. And through that facilitation, we want to enable youth, especially in high schools, universities, fresh graduates, youth between 15 to 25 years of age. We want them to become inspiring future entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and change makers. If you ask what is the triple helix model of innovation, it's a very interesting model of innovation that brings together three important ecosystems in any country. And those three ecosystems are government. I'm checking. If you ask what is the triple helix model of innovation, it's a very interesting model of innovation that brings together three important ecosystems in any country. And those three ecosystems are government, industry, companies, and so on and so forth. And number three is academia, universities, and high schools. So our mission is to facilitate collaboration between these three ecosystems of the triple helix ecosystem, namely government, industry, and academia. And through that facilitation, we want to enable youth, especially in high schools, universities, fresh graduates, youth between 15 to 25 years of age. We want them to become inspiring future entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and change makers. If you ask what is the triple helix model of innovation,
make them change makers. Make them change makers. I ain't making this shit up, you know. What do we got here? Race is a social construct. Race is a social construct, phenotype. NPR, the invention of race. You know, we understand genetics and phenotypes, and we understand that you have one race here, couple of one race here. You know, they have kids. They're going to have kids of the same race. We have kids over here of another race. They're going to have kids of that race. And if you have a person from this race over here and a person from this race here, they're going to have a mix of the two races. But what we need to understand is that we're just one race, the human race. So again, our diversity, genetic diversity, is not being recognized or whatever, I don't know, but we're one race now. Race is just the difference in the race of course, color, like the black or white or red or yellow or purple or whatever it is. Those are just social constructs. Race is a social construct. Okay. And this is just in 2020. The idea that race is a social construct comes from the pioneering work of anthropologist Franz Boas. Boas, I don't know. During a time when race-based science, let me see if I can make sure I'm in here. I might have to go down a bit here, just to make sure you can get all this in here. Sorry about that. During a time when race-based science and the eugenics movements were becoming mainstream, anthropologist Franz Boas actively sought to prove that race was a social construct, not a biological fact. Papa Franz, as the father of anthropology, was a particularly active academic agent of the Fabian Gramscian Marxist socialism. Just coincidence, right? Particularly active academic agent of Fabian Gramscian, Antonio Gramsci, and Marxist socialism. It's all the same shit. As it were, communism. So much so that he is mentioned and or referenced 60 plus times in that great deceit that I showed you by Zygmunt Dobbs. He's mentioned 60 plus times in that. crap, I guess his last name's in here is 80 times. Oh, but yeah, but 60 plus times out of the 80, at least 60 of them were his name, you know. Yeah, he was this freaking it says Mark Van Doren, which is a guy that was stuck in a game show and there was fraud in the game show and everything, you know, and it was a big scam back in the day. But anyway, he says this guy here has an extensive record of activity in the communist fronts. Belonging to with him to the first front cited below were such persons as Sherwood Anderson, Rodger Baldwin, who was one of the guys who founded either one of the big, was it NAACP, or I can't remember what organization he was one of the co-founders of. Friends Boas, there it is. John Dewey. John Dewey's, his name's right next to that, you know. All the Fabian type, you know. So, I mean, and they're bragging about it here on NPR that he was the head of anthropology, you know. And that race is a social construct. And that Great Deceit documents not only the extent to which he was involved, but how high and how important his role was in initiating it. And that anthropology is one of the ways. Anthropology was like the original way in that article. Let me see if I can. Let me see. Let me see. The socialists have always realized that the importance of capturing the impressionable mind of youth, and that they set out by gaining control and teaching the professions in the United States over a century ago. This was written in the 1963 or 4 or something. The Emperor Caligula is said to have wished that the Roman people had only one neck, which he could sever at a single stroke. This sentiment was also ascribed to several of his bloodthirsty successors, and the socialists applied it to education. They wanted one overall category into which all subjects could be bundled. About 1825, St. Simon, the father of modern socialism, and since that time, the socialists have been wrapping together all the arts and sciences until today. Anthropology, sociology, history, geography, economics, and jurisprudence are all grouped under the heading of social sciences. Then by clever semantic inventions, they prove in all these subjects that socialism is and has been and always will be the inevitable answer to all the problems of the world. See, this is, you ever notice that climate change, sustainable development, the cure is always communism or world socialism. Poverty, the cure is world socialism. All the sustainable development goals, the cure is the redistributive justice of world socialism. You know? Like I said before, if only the dinosaurs were communists, they'd still be here. Yeah. But anyways, a new conceptualization of ethnicity for social epidemiologic and health equity research. The new conceptualization of ethnicity for social epidemiologic and health equity research. This is that paper out of University of California, 2010. We define race as a social construct linked to phenotype. As evidence per the same evolutionary Darwinian scientism that it's been shown that, quote, genetic differences between populations from within a particular race, example black, are often far more pronounced than between races, black and white. Yeah, we've touched on this before. It's been noticed before in some of the stuff that I've read in today's show and the last show that I went over, is that they mention like 80 or 85% of the genetic diversity among people is within a race, like 15% or some shit of the genetic diversity is between races. So between ethnicities, because we're all one race now. And actually, there is no race. There's no such thing as race. There's no such thing, it's a social construct. It's because of capitalism, white supremacy, Until recently, race was considered an immutable characteristic of individuals and used to organize the human population according to purported genetically determined genetic determinism, intellectual and other capacities. Social scientists have debunked the notion of race as a biological construct. You get that? Anybody who's a biologist out there? Social scientists have debunked the biology of race. Social sciences. Social scientists have debunked the notion of race as a biologic construction. As they're debunking the science of everything else, right? Social science are debunking the whole of science as anything other than social sciences. That as agents of Marxist or Marxian world socialist collectivist change that necessitate the social change and the social revolution and the world socialist revolution. Necessitate, justify, and necessitate. A growing body of work on race as a social, not biological construct is strengthening the validity with which investigators examine racism's effects on population health. Again, population health, public health. Race defines, separates, and limits access based on phenotype. So what about the people that are of one race but don't look it? So only if you look, so you're I don't know. They used to have what they call high boy yellow, or what was for then there was I can't remember what they called the girls. If white people, if they had any lineage of black, known to be a black lineage at all, like they had a black grandfather or a black great-great-grandfather or great-great-grandmother, they were considered black, even though they looked white. But now that same is being flipped on its ear, that same concept is being flipped on its ear to where you can't be of a certain ethnicity unless you can't be black unless you're black enough. It's the whole lunch bag thing in reverse. They used to have this concept where if you're, they'd have black people doing shows or whatever, you know, you couldn't be in the show unless if you were darker than the lunch bag, you didn't get to go on. They wouldn't let you go on. Now it's if you're not darker, you don't get to be part. It's what other people would say you are, not what you would say yourself. So you can't identify. But what if you identify? See, this is all progressivism at war with itself. All progressive concepts at war with themselves. You know, I've always said that progressives love nothing more than to eat their own. You know, and we get into that confronting institutionalized racism. Chimera. Confronting institutionalized racism. This article here. Chimera Phyllis Jones, MD, PhD. Emerging Investigations and Analytic Methods Branch Division of Adult and Community Health, National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So that is CDC, right? When I was invited to submit a paper for this issue, Phylon, I'm going to get into Phylon in a minute, I immediately knew that my topic would be confronting institutionalized racism. That is because I have become convinced that it's only by naming racism, asking the question, how is racism operating here, and then mobilizing with others to actually confront the system and dismantle it. Mobilizing with others, that is, confronting institutionalized racism. We have to actually confront the system and dismantle it, that we can have any significant or lasting impacts on the pervasive racial health disparities that have plagued this country for centuries. You see where it goes? If you can make the social pivot to the phenotype of race as a social construct, all these, once you make that pivot, once you make that social pivot, then all these other social tangents come into play. All these other intersections, at the intersections of all these Marxist accusatories, critical theory accusatories, you know. And then you've got this, you know, A growing body of work on race as a social, not biological construct is strengthening the validity with which investigators examine racism's effects on population health. Race defines, separates, and limits. We have to actually confront the system and dismantle it. And that we have any significant lasting impact on the pervasive racial health disparities. Then we get into the whole the need for social change and the redistributive justice of world socialisms and human rights, and as world socialism is the cure. Yeah. Yeah. We have to dismantle it. We have to confront and dismantle the system, which is the controlled demolition of the individualist or capitalist system of America. It's all intrinsic to that. What is racism out of that article? First of all, racism is a system. It's not an individual character flaw, nor a personal moral failing, nor psychiatric illness. It's a system consisting of structures, policies, practices, and norms. So we got to disrupt the normative. That structure, opportunity, and assigned value based on phenotype. That structures opportunity and assigns value based on phenotype. Collectivism assigns value to not all things but all people. There is no intrinsic value for any human life in a collectivist society. Not in the utility of a collectivist centrally planned everything in a collectivist society. You don't pull your weight. George Bernard Shaw said it plain as day. You don't pull your weight in the canoe out, you go, man. You know, it's like an egg farmer. You know, as long as them chickens are laying eggs, you're good. Once them chickens stop laying eggs, they're gone. They're gone. You're not going to keep feeding them and taking care of them at the expense of taking care of them if they're not putting out the eggs. It's the same way planners look at society as the organism of society. You don't pull your weight, you're gone. There's no intrinsic value to life, to any individual whatsoever in a collectivist society. It's the hive, man. It's the organism that matters. All right. And what are the impacts of this system? It unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities. It automatically, the impacts of this system, it unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities. There's your white supremacy, right? When we talk about racism at all in this country, it is usually discussed in this context. But at the same time that the system is unfairly disadvantaging some individuals and communities, it's also unfairly advantaging the other individuals and communities. It's also unfairly advantaging, this is your white privilege, or capitalist privilege. The exploitation of capitalism does the same thing. I mean, you can read any whiteness paper on whiteness. There was Helfin, Julie Helfin, I can't remember what her first name was, wrote this whole thing on whiteness. It got this whole white supremacy or whiteness of America ball rolling, right? Yeah. Unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities. It also unfairly advantages other individuals and communities. So it's out of the same accusatory. It's out of the same collectivism. Out of the same social pivot. This issue of white privilege is much less frequently discussed in this country. Race is a social classification of people based on phenotype. That is, race is the societal box into which others put you based on your physical features. But what about, people that are black that have light skin? What about other races around the world that may, I don't know, what do people identify? What about people that are, enrolled in different tribes that aren't full-bloods, that aren't, are they not really? So they allow you to identify? Are you going to be able to say, well, if you grew up black in a black family and you had one black parent, but you look white, are you going to say that you identify as black? You can't if you don't look black, according to this. That's what I'm going to show you. Yeah. That is, race is the societal box into which others put you based on your physical features. As such, it is distinct from genetic endowment or cultural heritage. Public health scientists have too long used the variable race as a proxy for socioeconomic status, culture, and genes. While historical injustices and contemporary structural factors that perpetuate those injustices, institutionalized racism, have created a relationship between phenotype, race, and socioeconomic status in this country. Even that proxy relationship is rough. With regard to culture, each phenotypic racial group is derised in cultures, and there are cultural similarities across groups. With regard to genes, the few genes that determine skin color, hair texture, and facial features, the principal aspects of phenotype used to classify people into races in the United States, are not informative about other aspects of the genotype at the individual level. Yet race, noted by a hospital admission clerk on a medical record, is the same race noted by the sales clerk in a store, a taxi driver or a police officer on the street, a judge in the courtroom, or a teacher in the classroom, and this racial classification has a profound impact on life opportunities and daily life experiences in this country. I hypothesize that it is the classification by others based on phenotype and not self-identity that impacts health. So if you include the people who identify as black, then none of this shit works. If you include the people that identify as Native American, then none of this shit works. I therefore propose that researchers measure race with the following questions. I put on there, holy shit, you have to pass another lunch bag test? This time in reverse. Only if you're black or red, yellow, or whatever enough. You have to look the part, dude, or none of this shit works. How do other people usually classify you in this country? How do other people usually classify you in this country? So there goes your gender identity. If you apply the same shit, right? I mean, cops are being told that if a man says he's a woman, then you can't say, yo, dude, you're telling me you're a freaking woman? We already know you're freaking messed up and that you're lying to me straight through your teeth. No, you lose your job for doing that shit, no. They have to force the masses to indulge the delusion. You know? And as we'll see, gender is a social construct, no more or less than race is a social construct. All based on the same shit that comes out of the social pivot from a Marxist collectivist based understanding of science. So she says, I therefore propose that researchers measure race with the following question. How do other people usually classify you in this country? Would you say white, black, or African American, Hispanic, or Latino, Asian, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, American Indian, or Alaskan Native, or some other group? The question has already been included in the Reactions to Race module that was piloted on the 2002 Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System by 6 states: California, Delaware, Florida, New Hampshire, New Mexico, and North Carolina. Yep. That way we can keep who is an Indian down to who looks an Indian. Who is black according to who looks black, and who gets to determine who looks black. I mean, it's going to boil down to somebody. Somebody's going to say, "Well, if you're borderline, well, are you black or not? Are you white or not? Are you Indian or not? You know." Your race is according to what other people say you are, not what you say you are. Your gender, imagine, is what other people say you are, not what you say you are. You got to remember, gender is different than sex. Sex and gender are two different things. Sex is genetic. Gender is different than sex. It used to be the same, but it's not anymore. I don't know. I'm going to get down here in a second. I'm going to wrap this up. But you can see where we're going. I'm just laying out more evidence to this whole concept that we've been infiltrated, our whole concept of everything we know is being premised on Marxian collectivism. Our understanding of the science that we know has a Marxian collectivist fundamental foundation, then the social pivot to everything else Marxian collectivist is just you see what I'm saying? It's just a natural. You don't even have to jump. There isn't even a jump there anymore. It's there. It becomes a natural extension of that. The Marxist socialism is just an extension of Marxist science, or Marxian, if not Marxist. I got the genetics versus phenomics of epigenetics of social constructs. Now we get into the epigenetics, that's post-genetics. Another aspect of it, I want to get to where I want to close this out. I got this article here, Genetics of Human Social Behavior. The genetics of human social behavior. I got an article in this book right here. I got an article in this freaking book right here that it talks about how geneticists need to devise, and when we take control of our evolution and start directing our own evolution and improve on what nature has done to make humanity more sustainable, so that we don't consume, so we don't eat as much, so that we don't shit enough as much, and we don't fart as much, and we don't burp as much, I guess, right? If we can make humanity smaller, then we'll be more sustainable. It's nuts. It's nuts. Maybe I'll pull that out for the next show and show you. But genetics of human social behavior, this is where we're at. Most of the studies we cite may be susceptible to the confounds of population stratification, and very few used family-based association methods in which genetic differences within families are used to determine the influences of genes, thereby controlling for ethnic or cultural factors. You gotta say, oh, see this guy, this blue here, you're citing this guy. Additionally, replication in the independent samples are rare, and many replications in these independent samples are rare. What's that say? And many of the studies that we discuss have yet to be vetted across ethnic groups or by other investigators. Let the reader be further advised that genetic association studies for complex phenotypes are known for non-replications. What's that say about it, right? In the search for social genes, the definition of phenotype is crucial. In the search for social genes, I guess if Lozanko says there isn't genes, would he accept it if they were social genes? I don't know. Figure 3, the chart below, heritability of social behavior phenotypes, the relative influence of genetic effects, both additive and dominant, both additive and dominant. The shared environment, and the unshared or unique environment, which also includes measurement error, in contribution to social phenotype. In contributing to social phenotypes, phenotypes are listed in order of estimated genetic effects. So what they're saying here, if you can get this, put this. Oh, I could probably. Sorry, I'm not really good at this shit. But yeah, this chart, it shows what percentage. The blue is the genetic effects, red is shared environment effects, and green are unshared environment. This is 100% of your. Figure 3, heritability of social behavior phenotypes, the relative influence of genetic effects. So, only 55% of your pre-social behavior, pro-social behavior in boys, 55% is genetic. Well, 15% is shared environment. You've got different things in here. infidelity in females. Holy shit. Infidelity in females, 50% of your infidelity is genetic, according to this. Let me see what else they got. Empathy. Empathy, you need. What would make good social people in a good social society? Another one of these things would be like altruism, right? Is altruism genetic? If altruism is genetic, and we need more altruistic people living for the sake of others, then how do we genetically? We can learn how to do that and genetically direct evolution to a more genetically compliant part of the social society. You see what I'm saying? Where this conformity that's been taught to you is freedom, that you're just gonna live and breathe this shit. And then if somebody walks in and is not wearing a mask, you're gonna jump their shit because the only thing you know is it's gonna be genetic. If we could do that, wow! Imagine if we could do that, right? They've talked about it. Like I said, that article in the book that I went over in my book, Last Call for Liberty, is that they want to devise a more and more sustainable humanity. They're not joking. It's a thing. It's a real thing. Couldn't make this shit up. Personality genetics, a seeming point of departure from studying the genetics of social cognition is personality genetics, which would apply to social, because if they can genetically fine-tune your personality, well, personality in a collectivist doctrine sense is the degree to which you are a active member, a productive member of society, and you, wherever you fit in, or wherever you're assigned, whatever aspect of society or portion of society that you're assigned through the division of labor. That goes back to Auguste Comte too. Where they can finally use, it's all part of eugenics, or eugenics comes out of the same shit, where they can finally assign you to where you're going to do the most good for the collective. It's coming. A seeming point of departure from studying the genetics of social cognition is personality genetics, a field that has blossomed in the past 2 decades, and this came out when? 2010. So since the 90s. Okay, rather than notice all these blue references here. This is a common thing throughout all white papers in academia, throughout the whole of academia. And I got an epiphany. I'll run it by at the end. Rather than focusing on the genetics of the class personality traits that have been extensively reviewed and subjected to meta-analysis. This person, this person, this person, this person, this person. We focus on what we consider emerging areas of research and social cognition that have only recently begun to be studied with molecular genetics. They're being recently studied through molecular genetics. Pro-social behavior, inadvertently altruistic creatures have a pathetic tendency to die before reproducing. Oh, the bird that makes the call. That's the example that, Brett Weinstein likes to bring up like it was his idea. Right. Inadvertently, altruistic creatures have a pathetic tendency to die before reproducing their kind. Early twin studies indicate the importance of genes in contributing to human pro-social behavior. That guy. Broad inheritabilities were observed in adult twin pairs for self-reported measures of altruism, empathy, and nurturance, with only a negligible effect on the shared environment. More recent studies have taken a development perspective and have examined heritability of pro-social traits and empathy in children across a wider range in the hopes of identifying more systematic development patterns. That guy. Or that guy this many times. Here, and here. A consistent pattern of results has emerged in which genetics and non-shared environment effects become increasingly important, and shared environment effects decrease in importance as children move from early childhood to middle childhood. You got empathy. No genetic influences were found at 14 to 20 months, while strong shared environmental influences accounted for most of the variance. However, at 24 and 36 months, genetic accounts for 34 to 47% of the variance in the common empathy factor. They're measuring this shit. In a recent study designed to examine the role of specific genes contributing to empathy, the authors tested a single intraionic, I don't know, whatever that is. Biologists might know. Previously associated with autism. That's the autism gene, I guess. Is that the autism gene? Are they saying that autism is genetic? Whatever autism is. Got some more stuff on autism too, maybe in another show. And maternal sensitivity compared with individuals homogeneous for this gene, whatever that is, individuals with one or more copies of that gene maybe exhibit lower behavioral and dispositional empathy. Aggression, they have an aggression gene. Social decision making through the lens of experimental economics. Pencil and paper approach. Personality genetics is gradually being complemented by incentivized laboratory-based paradigms. Sometimes powerfully combined with brain imaging, which are generating deep insights into the neurogenetic structure of social cognition. Did you know there was such a thing? Maybe Cooey knows. Maybe Cooey's heard of that shit. Which are genetic deep insights into the neurogenetic structures of social cognition. I should ask him what that is. There is an emerging literature combining experimental economics and behavioral genetics, approaches to explore the genetic basis on economic decision making. More redistributive wealth, maybe? I don't know. Stop consuming. Depicts games commonly employed in behavioral economic experiments. Get this one. They have these games and play experimentals. The director, ultimatum, and trust games. They have trust games. Now, when we were getting our sensitivity training, today they're getting, implicit bias training and stuff. What they call largely call it sensitivity training, where a lot of the critical theory accusatories are addressed through sensitivity training. And one of these sensitivity training things that they did with us, I'll never forget it. They had us, a bunch of corrections officers standing. They had us go for training, and we had to stand in this giant freaking circle. And I had maybe a little over 4 years on the job, or right around 4 years on the job. So we're all standing, and they had us stand in a circle, and then they had people stand behind us, and we were supposed to fall into their arms, that we fall and we trust, and we build trust, by falling. It was funny because nobody would do it. They wanted us to just fall into these other people's freaking arms, blindly fall back. If we hit the floor, you get a broken ass or a broken neck or some shit, right? I ain't doing that. That was supposed to be part of our sensitivity training. So this is all just another confirmation on where that shit comes from. It's just nuts, So these games illustrate fundamental concepts of dyadic social interactions, including fairness, altruism, and performances of equity. Just saying right there. In that dictator game, the dictator makes an unilateral decision recording the distribution of a fixed sum of money between himself and the second player and the recipient, because the recipient is completely powerless. Allotment of money by the dictator can be seen as a measure of pure altruism. What? So if you get your ration, it's altruism of the dictator. That's how it can be seen. A recent study focused on uncovering specific genes that partially explain individual difference. It's all based on gene shit. The trust game is a widely employed paradigm to model cooperative behavior as measured by the interpersonal trust and willingness to reciprocate trust. Well, I was like, fuck that. We ain't doing that shit. Oh, you good? No, I ain't doing it. Note high number of references indicating implicit evolutionary secular collectivist script, now implicit to not only science but the whole of academia. And this is kind of where I was getting at. You notice all these references, all these sites, these sources and references, all through this whole article is in the context of what these people have previously laid out. Now, you can either look at this, like this paper, this guy, or whoever the authors of this, is there anything that is original, any original thought process by the author? And you can either look at all these blue people, man, this guy is like freaking smart. These people know so much about this stuff that they know all the people that came up with the stuff that they know. You could either look at that as a tribute to how much they know, or is it that they're putting out the guardrails? They're saying, well, look, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here, and this is the proof that I'm drinking this Kool-Aid, and this is the proof that I'm drinking this Kool-Aid, and this is the proof that I'm drinking this frickin' Kool-Aid. That way, when I apply for funding, and the next freaking paper that shows that I'll show all the Kool-Aid that I'm drinking all down through this, so that my conclusion, and in my conclusion, regardless of what the freaking test or experiment or study results, and the conclusion, I'll just say, yeah, this just like all the other Kool-Aid, right? This is the kind of point that I want to get to here. And remarkably, I want to put the rich contours of human social behavior. Remarkably, there is evidence that these phenotypes show considerable heritability, and some have been associated with specific genes, the social genes. The small effect size of most genes so far identified that contribute to common diseases suggests that many genes, as well as the environment, are likely to contribute to social human behavior. Clearly, new data mining techniques, statistical methods, and faster computers will be required to analyze future studies. New data mining, electronic health records, statistical methods, and faster computers, AI, will be required to analyze future studies. There it is. For the past 2 decades, we have seen remarkable progress in unraveling the complexities of the neurogenetic architectures of the human social brain. Nevertheless, much remains to be learned, especially about how our species has created a global society. The global society is indeed remarkable achievement for an organ weighing, what? Oh, for an organ only weighing 1,350 grams. Is that our brain? Our society is a remarkable achievement for our brain, and attests to its remarkable plasticity and processing continuous stream of environmental information using neuroanatomical and neurogenetic mechanisms laid down over millions of years of hominid evolution. Millions of years of hominid evolution. Yeah. But I'm this stuff is so ingrained into everything that we know. I can't get away from it. I can't freaking get away from it. This is the hunting and trapping guide regulations and stuff from New York State, and it's hunting season now, and I've been out a couple times. It's bow season, and I got to put more time. It's one of the reasons why I haven't been able to got a lot of things I'm doing. Cutting firewood, hunting, setting up my stands, getting time in the stand, It's a lot of work, and it takes time. And I don't have it's just me, But anyways, getting back to my point, what I was saying here is that you can't get away from this shit. I don't care where you go, what aspect of life that you're trying, you can't get away from it. It's intrinsic. I opened this up. This is a hunting guide in New York State. Headline: DEC Wildlife Health Program uses a One Health approach to track and control diseases and toxins. They got the deer here, and turkeys. The One Health approach. The One Health. The one thing that that One Health actually applies the tenets of social revolution, of world socialist revolution, codifies the tenets of that revolution into global overarching global governance health laws, public health, population health, global governance health laws. It codifies the revolution into that so that you can't push back. It's illegal to push back against the revolution or any of the tenets of the revolution or any of the 17 sustainable development goals for that matter. What aspect of your life, again, like I said, is there any aspect of your life, awake or asleep, that does not affect directly or indirectly affect or can be said to affect or indirectly affect your health? Nothing. Zero. There's nothing. Just another example here. I got another example here. Another article in here. What waterfowl hunters need to know about bird flu, avian bird flu, and how it's it's crazy. Can't get away from it. Can't get away from it. You can't get away from it. It's even in New York State hunting and trapping guide. I hope you got something out of it. I know I'm just, I am like that guy said, I'm throwing words up in the air. I'm sorry. I'm going down through what these people are saying. These people that say they're Marxists or who say they're collectivists, and from a collectivist socialist perspective, what they're doing. And I'm just letting you know what they're saying. I'm trying to do the research to see if there's anything out there saying that they're doing what I think they're doing or what I can see that they're doing. But, again, just thinking out loud with this stuff. I could be full of shit on all this freaking stuff. I could be full of shit on it, but I don't know, man. I've got it documented. I started documenting this shit. Again, this published 2015, and I had 3 years into writing the book, and at least 3 years into writing the book, and 10 years of research that went into it. So, 20 plus years I got into seeing where this collectivism, and I can see it. I'm sorry, I'm not nose blind to it. And I'm not on the script. So, am I throwing words up in the air? Probably. But anyways, I hope you got something out of it. I'm Joe Marshall. Thanks for stopping by the Liberty Perspective, and I look forward to seeing and continuing this, because I got more. I got more of this shit. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thank you.